there have been calls for a public inquiry into the press, and that's been signed by high-profile figures, including sociologist and friend of Jason Atta, Professor Kwei Arday, who joins us now. Also with us is the political commentator Albi Amankona. But Kwei Arday, I'd like to start with you. You're a good friend of this poor man. When did you last see Jason, and what kind of state was he in?
Well, I went to see Jason on Monday. As a few of us went down to try and give him some support because I'd spoke to him. He was very, very struggling with everything. When I saw him, he lost weight. He was very clearly depressed. And this all it got to him. This has been an unprecedented amount of media scrutiny. He felt he couldn't leave the house and he was just completely overwhelmed. I mean, one of the last texts he sent to me said that he just couldn't see a way out. He just couldn't see a way forward, given everything and all this media storm that had been concocted.
Well, obviously, we're still awaiting the official cause of death, but clearly assumptions are being made. Did he give any indication to you of what his intentions were?
Well, I mean, I think assumptions can be made because what's happened here is that a young man has been lynched by the media. I mean, it's very clear. Like, it was very, very clear that all of the media stuff, all of this 188 articles in...
Jason Atta, the youngest black professor.
The real advantage of using software like Xero is that we can access the numbers, the information about our business wherever we are. Ultimately, that means that we have a holistic view of our cash flow and what we need to know when we need to know it.
LBC understands that Jason Atta, the former University of Cambridge professor, has been found dead. Reportedly, he was found unresponsive at an address in Battersea in South London this afternoon. He was later pronounced dead at the scene. A spokesperson for the Met Police said officers were called by the London Ambulance Service at 3:12 this afternoon. They said, sadly, a 41-year-old man was pronounced dead at the scene. His next of kin have been informed and are being supported by officers. At this time, his death is being treated as unexpected, but is not believed to be suspicious. The case
done something that we have never done before on this programme. I got a text, I started reading it, and I signalled to Eleanor, I really, really want to speak to this person. And I am about to speak to this person. Joe is in Brighton. Joe, I can't say what made you pick up the phone, because you picked up the phone because Eleanor rang you.
I did, yes. Thank you. Good morning.
No, thank you for getting in touch via text. Well, just tell me your story and why this is of particular interest to you.
Well, the short story for me is my father was a very prominent academic fraud, both academic fraud and a fraud in the pharmaceutical community. And as a result of finding out a lot about his fraudulent behaviour, I wrote a book about him and about me, which is called The Scientist Who Wasn't There, which is currently out at the moment if anyone wants to read it. But it's about exploring that idea of suddenly, as you have experienced in the last few days, that kind of deep disappointment. And then the question, why? Why on earth did this person do this thing?
In the media, August in Britain is known as silly season. The reason? Parliament is in recess. There's less obvious news to report on, less political debates. And so more niche stories have to fill the gap, and they take on added significance. Now, unfortunately, for him at least, the story this week in silly season has been that of Jason Atta. Now, Atta, as I imagine you've all heard by now, was a Cambridge academic in a prestigious role as Professor of Education. When he was appointed, he was celebrated as the youngest black professor in the university's history. But after extensive allegations of plagiarism, fabrication of data, and invented backstories, which all emerged sort of over the past fortnight, Atta has resigned. Now, the controversy is deeply embarrassing for Atta and for Cambridge University. But how newsworthy is it? Academic appointments at UK universities, even when they go horribly wrong, wouldn't usually make the inside of a national newspaper, let alone a front page. But this week, this story has been inescapable. On Thursday, Atta's resignation was the main story on the front page of The Telegraph. It was also on the front of The Times and The Guardian. The Daily Mail declared in glee that the scandal the left dismissed as racism had led to Atta stepping down from his job.
So is getting a new card machine actually worth it? Great question. Let me break it down for you. So if you run a small business and take, say, £1,000 a day in card payments, at a
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:33 is the time. Let's talk more about Jason Atta now. He was, of course, a professor at Cambridge University at Jesus College. He was professor of sociology of education. He resigned yesterday, saying that those I love.
Ago about his plagiarism accusations, and actually, he sent me his PhD and I had a look, and it's not plagiarism. It actually, this is the fundamental thing that underlies all of this. The main allegation: does he have the credential? It's not plagiarism. It was investigated by his university. So
yeah, this was an accusation that a lot of his 2015 PhD thesis at Liverpool John Moores University had been plagiarised. Repeated claims about that. Now that university did investigate, and they didn't uphold. You're quite right. He'd committed misconduct, academic misconduct. They said they were honest and reasonable errors. But it has been claimed by other academics at Cambridge that actually there are later findings, there are more claims that. But it doesn't just relate to plagiarism, does it? This relates to things like claims of having honorary academic positions at 3 universities, 2 in Britain, 1 in America, all 3 institutions having said, never heard of him, he doesn't. Now, why would someone say that they had it? I mean, I'm pretty sure I don't have an honorary professorship or honorary role at this or that university, therefore I've never claimed it. Why would someone, I don't know, mistakenly think they did?
Well, on all the specific allegations, I've spoken to Jason, I've spoken to people around him. Mm-hmm. I actually think some of the things in the news are not accurate, and I think he does actually have evidence about emails around some of his honorary professorships. So
they have given official statements to the media saying that he did not have these roles.
Well,
so they lying to the media.
The bigger question is, why is this even a story? This is a professor at Cambridge. This is not an elected official. It's not the Prime Minister. This is essentially somebody who's not in the public eye, who's been put under all of this scrutiny, which no other academic is getting, by the way. And the reason is, and it's got underlining all of this, is that to prove that he's this DEI hire, to prove that Cambridge hired him because black people shouldn't be hired at the University of Cambridge, right? And that's the issue. That's why people have been hounding him for the last 3 years. And that's why now every single piece of his biography is under scrutiny, where no one else is getting this level of scrutiny.
Okay,
I like to call this one the Nutty Professor, when wokery backfires. It's hilarious.
The board of electors on your interview day were absolutely unanimous. We are so lucky to have you.
Really? I'm talking, of course, about Professor Jason Atta.
Meet the most inspiring man in British academia. At least that's how the story went.
I learned to speak just before the age of 12, so I was 11. I learned to read and write when I was 18 years of age. Those milestones became quite significant. 12 years after learning to read and write, I gained a PhD, and then I ended up becoming one of the youngest professorial chairs in Cambridge's history.
Autistic at 3, mute at 11, illiterate until 18, and then a PhD in one of Cambridge's top chairs. And they didn't just hire him, they crowned him.
The board of electors on your interview day were absolutely unanimous. We are so lucky to have you. You are the best in the world in terms of the research that you do.
Best in the world. It is a beautiful story, much of it now called into question. Take the PhD, much of it allegedly copied, nearly word for word from another student's thesis. A resume padded with jobs he never held, including a professorship at Ohio State, which says it never heard of him, and a life story stacked with hardships and heroics, each one more unbelievable than the last. A brain tumor wiped his memory right before his final dissertation exam, so he relearned his whole entire thesis in weeks. He ran 30 marathons in 35 days, impressive. The last 9 on a broken leg. Turned up in a documentary that aired in 1964, 21 years before he was born. Someone even mailed a severed pig's head to his parents as a threat. One problem, police say they can't find record of it. It all came crashing down last week when he resigned in disgrace. Did he own a word of it? Not one. The relentless accusations, speculation, and public commentary have taken a profound toll on me and on those I love. But there comes a point when the personal cost becomes too great. And that resignation letter allegedly written with the assistance of AI. No apology, no accountability, just a con man playing the victim. And he's still cashing in. His memoir dropped today. It opens on a prophecy, a stranger telling young Arday he's destined for great and unfortunate things. That scene, very similar to Spartacus, the Gladiator TV show. He plagiarized his thesis. Did he plagiarize his own origin story? None of this was hard to catch. Yet one of the top universities on earth handed him a top job, a building full of geniuses, and not one of them saw a con man in plain sight. They didn't miss it. They'd already decided merit was not the point. And Arday couldn't agree more.
The idea of meritocracy is it's great in theory, but in actual practice, it falls time and time and time again, because meritocracy in itself is not equal. There is no equity in meritocracy. Only a small proportion or certain group of people from society benefit from meritocracy.
So he doesn't believe in merit, and the people who paid for it were his students. Their families spent a fortune on the best education money could buy and got a professor who wouldn't show up. One student called him terrible. He skipped meetings, no feedback, hour-long sessions that fizzled out in 20 minutes. And when the student complained, Arday allegedly implied she was racist and cited her, quote, white privilege. Did Cambridge miss the red flags, or did they choose to ignore them? Every woke box he checked was worth more to them than every student he let down. Equity was dressed up as excellence, and anyone who noticed was smeared. This isn't one professor or one university. It's the same rot inside every Western institution that swapped merit for ideology. The UK is the warning. The only question is whether the rest of the world listens before it's too late. Who better to ask about this than John Yu, a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and a professor. Professor Yu, a student in this young man's class, said that the song lyrics were the first red flag, the way he'd ramble about Tiny Tempa or Eminem and Beyonce. Is this how you conduct your lectures at Berkeley?
Well, you know, maybe I should give that a try now that you mention it. That's probably get my students' attention. But, you know, Kaylee, you ended on the right point, which is this guy clearly was a pathological liar. He liked to pile on lie after lie after lie to see what he could get away with. But it's more important than just him. He exposes the corruption and rot that's at the heart of our major universities, not just in England, but in the United States and in the media that is complicit in this by not asking questions. In fact, he accused journalists who did ask questions of being racist, and the police showed up at the journalists' doors to threaten them not to ask more questions. But unfortunately, even in the United States, you have seen now, I think, universities for several decades using race, engaging in social engineering, treating their trust from the public to teach their kids and also to research the finest thinking and writing and thought in the world to try to press the limits of human knowledge, instead have turned that trust into their efforts to get the right racial balances. The only thing I hope is that we've started to turn things around here in the United States, partially thanks to the Trump administration, whose Civil Rights Division is pressing investigations of our universities, but also from the bottom up. States are creating, like the University of Texas, where I'm thinking of moving, creating these new civics colleges, which are trying to fight back against this institutional rot by creating new spaces for free thought and free investigation and get away from DEI and wokeism.
Well said. On a serious note. On a much lighter note, you know, I went to Oxford for a year. I did tutorials. I would have been able to snuff this guy out. I wasn't at Cambridge. I was at Oxford. I'm curious, do you think you could snuff out one of your colleagues if they claim to run 35 marathons in a short period of time? You're pretty smart, Professor Yu.
Well, if it was a professor, it would probably be the students who carried him for the 30 miles every day that he need to break that record. But you're right. This is so ridiculous. You would have snuffed it out, Kaylee. I would have snuffed it out. But unfortunately, these universities, they foster this kind of lying. They protect people like this, and it makes it harder to root out this kind of corruption.
His story is not in isolation. Professor Yu, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Well, polls close in Wisconsin in moments. A live report from outside Hong campaign headquarters.
If you live in the UK and have been injured in the last 3 years in an accident that wasn't your fault, then you could be entitled to thousands, if not tens of thousands, in compensation.
Most extraordinary fraudster Jason Atta has resigned as a professor at Cambridge, one of Britain's two top universities, and our heads should roll. Now, I told you about him last week. From the start, his claims sounded too good and impossible to be true.
My name is Jason Atta. I'm Professor of Sociology of Education at the University of Cambridge. I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. I learned to speak just before the age of 12, so I was 11. I learned to read and write when I was 18 years of age. Those milestones became quite significant. 12 years after learning to read and write, I gained a PhD, and then I ended up becoming one of the youngest professorial chairs in Cambridge's history.
Now, with a story like that and being black, hiring him would make Cambridge seem so enlightened that his boss nearly cried to welcome him.
So good to see you.
Here's his new boss at Cambridge.
We are so lucky to have you. You are the best in the world in terms of the research that you do.
But nowadays, extraordinary lies have been exposed. Here are just a few. His PhD plagiarised another student's thesis in nearly 200 passages. He also faked quotes in his research. He falsely claimed to have raised $10 million for charity. He falsely claimed to have worked for an aid group overseas. He falsely claimed to have run 30 marathons in just 35 days, some of them with a broken leg. He falsely claimed to have been a visiting professor at 3 universities. He falsely claimed someone sent him a pig's head as a threat. He falsely claimed to have started the documentary 7 Up 21 years before he was even born. And on it went. When a literary supplement investigated his plagiarism, Arday called the police, who actually warned the journalists to drop it. And he did. But now Arday has resigned, admitting nothing, and Cambridge academics are demanding the university have a proper investigation into how it let itself be conned. Joining me from London is Talk TV host Samara Gill. Samara, this is just so astonishing. Now, a lot of academics have first defended Arday when his story started to unravel. How are they coping with it now?
Look, it really is a case of the not so talented Mr. Arday, isn't it? I mean, I think the most amazing part of this, the fact that Cambridge never cross-checked any of this. They were defending him until the end. And this just shows how much they wanted someone like him to be within their institution and how they would stop at nothing to have someone like an Arday basically be the poster child for everything that they're trying to or have been trying to apologize for decades. So it's just ridiculous. You know, he was created in their image. They feel so much guilt around this. They wanted a child of wolves type that they could empower and shelter and save. And this guy has done more for actually detracting from Black Lives Matter than anyone else. He's done really, really terrible things, in my opinion, to the black community because he's discrediting whoever will come after him. And I think that is shameful, to be honest, because people like him just glide through life without being questioned. And you're right. The fact that he called police on a journalist who even just wanted to merely investigate what was going on. I spoke to that journalist. He has no racist intentions, is ridiculous. And then it says a lot about Britain that the police told the journalist to drop whatever he was investigating, Andrew. It's scurrilous.
And it was the Times educational supplement. It wasn't like the Sun newspaper. It was what a joke for police to get involved. Not a joke, it's a scandal. But it wasn't, you know, we know that he was a fraud as an academic. Was he even any good as a teacher? Because we now read that some of his students accuse him of poor supervision and now want Cambridge to revise their grades upwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they should do that. I think it's ridiculous to anyone who has paid for one of these, in my opinion, Mickey Mouse degrees, but so be it. I mean, when I was just reading a list of what now Cambridge actually offers in terms of, you know, things like basket weaving classes, etc., the stuff that is ridiculous. I mean, honestly, I think that people should have whatever he's marked double checked. I was actually listening to an interview that he did on Talk years ago on the station we have over here, and you can tell that he's not all that. I'm really surprised that he wasn't called out before this because he can barely string a sentence together. And so the fact that he was allowed into an institution such as Cambridge to go and mark people's essays, etc., I'd be asking for my money back on that degree if it was in his field. But he's now cancelled his book tour. He's obviously resigned, and he's right to be audited. It's something that is well overdue for Mr. Arday.
Make bold moves. Make breakthroughs. Make your mark. Make the future. KPMG. Make the difference.
Stop killing your eyes watching movies or playing games on that tiny phone screen. Open this app and turn your phone into a
Jason Atta was once held up as a symbol of what British academia could be.
Now his death is a reckoning over duty of care, institutional failure, media scrutiny, and racism. The Cambridge professor resigned last week after allegations of plagiarism and that parts of his life were exaggerated or made up. Arday admitted errors in his work but denied plagiarism. The 41-year-old was clearly struggling when he stepped down, saying in a statement, "What I have experienced has gone far beyond scholarly disagreement."
He was leaning on a number of people. I think he was desperately trying to find a way to stay alive, actually. He kept telling me, and I know he kept telling other people that he was leaning on, that he felt as though his life was over. I'm pretty surprised Cambridge did not recognise how extraordinarily vulnerable he was.
Cambridge University have released a short statement in which they say they are desperately saddened by the death of Jason Atta and extend their sympathies to his friends and family. But we've spoken to multiple professors at Cambridge University who say that they feel let down by the senior leadership there and that they feel there was a lack of duty of care towards Atta. Some feel a sense of mutiny towards senior leadership and feel that there must now be resignations.
Arday became the youngest black professor in Cambridge's history in 2023, and questions over his academic credentials have been swirling for some time. For some, his backstory was too hard to believe, and many tried to pick holes in it. Arday was autistic and said he didn't speak until 11.
I went to university at 20, but had the reading age of a 9-year-old. You know, so you're trying to really kind of...
Really? I mean, is that possible?
Yeah, it is.
Allegations against Arday's work resurfaced recently when this former Cambridge researcher Nathan Kofnas published claims of plagiarism in the professor's work. Kofnas had his research role terminated over his views on diversity in 2024. He argued true meritocracy would push out black people in higher profile roles, including Harvard professors, to zero. Arday then suffered a relentless campaign of coverage against him, with his stories making headlines around the world. There were articles asking questions about his life before academia. Was he really on a popular TV show, 7 Up? And how long did it really take him to run from Edinburgh to London for charity? The stories went deep into his personal life.
In the last 9 days, there was 188 newspaper articles about Jason Atta, right? You do not see that same level of scrutiny, that same level of coverage about other cases of plagiarism, other cases of people exaggerating their CVs.
Is it because he was a black professor?
There is no doubt that the fact that he was a black man was a contributory factor, if not the major factor, as to why the coverage that he received and the coverage of the case he received.
Some allege conservative figures are targeting black academics in a war on diversity. Black professors make up barely 1% at UK universities. At the heart of it all is a personal tragedy. Arday's family said last night they were in shock to have lost an amazing father, partner, brother, uncle and son.
Emily with her there. Now joining me is Kendi Andrews, who's an academic specialising in black studies and a friend of Jason Atta. Kendi, first off, our deepest condolences, obviously. I understand you spoke to him yesterday, which must mean within a matter of hours before he died. What was his frame of mind, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I spoke to him on Monday, we had dinner, and I texted him over the week. And it was very clear that he was overwhelmed, he was upset, he was depressed, he couldn't see a way out because of this avalanche of stories. 188 stories on Jason Atta. It's a mob, it's ridiculous, it's ludicrous. And he just he didn't want to leave the house. When I saw him on Monday, he had lost lots of weight. He was clearly damaged by all this scrutiny and speculation around him.
And clearly emotionally isolated from what you've just said. Was he on his own yesterday when you spoke?
He's had people around him, and we've been trying to support him. But I do want to stress here, this isn't just a tragedy. A man was lynched yesterday. Like, when you talk about those amount of articles, and you can't just blame Cambridge University. This is the media. This is 188 articles. This is constant scrutiny. This is people outside of his house, even today when he's died. This is unprecedented. And I want to stress this very clearly. If he was white, he would still be alive. This is the story, and I just can't believe how bad it's become.
The biggest benefit of working with listener is the reliable decision making at scale.
No, you're not answering the question. I've spoken with a young black female student. No, you'll listen to me. No, you'll listen to me. Doctor, we do it my way. Nana, so you are a student at Cambridge.
Yes, I'm a black philosophy student at Cambridge.
Do you know Dr. Kofnas?
Yes, I do know Dr. Kofnas, and we actually held a protest against his appointment here. And I think the main issue when it comes down to his research and what he says is the fact that as a university, they also have a duty of care to us students. And the issue is the proportion of black students is not a lot at Cambridge. And when instances like this happen, we tend to feel overlooked and very marginalised already, to be honest, as a group. And the issue is that once his certain research and views out there, it invited a lot of hateful comments and a lot of racist comments. So in our philosophy group chats, there were discussions about the type of racism in his argument, and I just think certain things should not be discussed intellectually, especially things that have no academic backing and background and so on, especially when we held a protest, just to speak against his appointment and his views. Okay. A lot of his supporters were flooding the social media with racist comments, using slurs and so on, inciting violence.
Okay, so Nana, to the 4 academics at Oxford, 2 from Cambridge, 2 from King's College London, some from Harvard and elsewhere, who say this is part of academic thought and philosophical research that allow to think items such as these. What would you say to them, Nana?
I think, as a student, I think academic freedom is very important, and I think freedom of speech is very important as well. You should be able to express your arguments in an intelligible way, but the issue is what his arguments consist of, and I don't think that there's any academic backing to his arguments.
Do you mind my asking? It causes you personal physical distress?
Yeah, I think being a black student at Cambridge is already very difficult at times. Right. You can feel quite othered and marginalised. And I think that when you have a professor in your department that says these sort of views and you have people coming to you debating about things, I think it can create not a nice feeling when you're supposed to be happy in your academic setting and able to enjoy what you're doing and learn.
I've got it in front of me.
Right. Okay, so I think you left out an almost there.
Blacks would disappear.
Good morning. So my background is in the philosophy of science, particularly biology, philosophy of biology and ethics. So I'm interested in the relevance of evolutionary theory to various problems in across areas of science and philosophy. And as part of this research, I study human evolution and population differences among humans, including in traits such as intelligence.
How do you determine the level of intelligence down to someone's skin color?
Intelligence and skin color per se are not related. So there are population differences in the means and distributions of scores on intelligence tests.
So you're really saying your research prompts you to believe that in a meritocratic world, black people would only excel in sport and entertainment?
Well, that was not my quote, and in fact, that's a false, obviously a false claim.
Well, I have the blog here. I'm in a meritocracy. Harvard, referring to Harvard, the university, will be recruited from the best of the best students, which means the number of black professors would approach 0%. Blacks would disappear from all high-profile positions outside of sports and entertainment. Doctor, I can read on. I've got it in front of me.
Right. Okay, so I think you left out an almost there.
Blacks would disappear from almost all high-profile positions outside of sports and entertainment.
But note the preceding.
But how can you say that?
Preceding sentences. Under a colorblind system that judged applicants only by academic qualifications, blacks would make up 0.7%.
But I ask again, how can you say that?
Right, because I'm quoting Harvard. Harvard conducted an internal study in 2013, which I linked to, as you can see.
What do
which
you
was
hope to
revealed.
achieve by this, Doctor?
Well, I'm sorry, you brought up the question of how I could say that.
Okay.
So let's finish that.
Briefly,
So I'm
'cause
saying that because Harvard said that.
Okay. Why?
Harvard has been sued successfully, found guilty of discriminating against Asian applicants. As part of that lawsuit, their discriminatory practices were revealed.
What?
Their practices of awarding extra points to members of certain groups.
Okay.
They said that if admissions were based only on academic qualifications, blacks would be 0.7% of Harvard students, as opposed to the current approximately 14%.
What would you say to black students at the University of Cambridge who've expressed their distress over this?
Well, I should comment that statistical generalizations about different populations don't apply to all other populations.
No, I wonder if I can bring you back to the question that I asked, Doctor, is what would you say, and I've heard from one already on the show, to black students at Cambridge who are distressed by this?
Right, so I'm answering the question.
Well, I'll deem if you are, actually, Doctor, so let's go ahead. What would you say to those students?
Well, you're responsible for the questions. I'm responsible for the answers.
Yep.
You asked me what I would say.
Here we go.
This is what I would say. So statistical generalizations don't necessarily apply across in different countries and different societies.
No, you're not answering the question. I've spoken with a young black female student. No, you'll listen to me. No, you'll listen to me. Doctor, we do it my way, okay? We're going to do it my way because you're on my show. Doctor, I have heard from a young female black student who has expressed her distress because of this. And she says it's already difficult enough to be a black student at the University of Cambridge, and this only makes her life and those of her friends who are also black tougher. So I wonder if we could get down to the meat of your answer to that. What would you say directly to that young woman?
Okay, well, as I was saying,
no,
I'll skip.
Please don't take me on a tour of academe. Just what would you say to that young woman?
So are you... well, I told you what I'd say, and you interrupted me. But I'll say that if your position is we're not allowed to talk about Harvard's own statistics about their admission, we're not allowed to talk about Harvard's admissions policy because somebody could pluck that statement.
Your
out of
position
context.
is, Doctor, you can knowingly cause offence and distress because of the position you enjoy and the research you can point to. You can knowingly cause distress.
Knowingly cause distress?
Yes.
I mean, people are distressed if you talk about the role of testosterone in sex.
No, I'm not talking about the role.
People...
I don't know why you keep seeking to take me down another path. You're knowingly causing distress with black students on the University of Cambridge, and I'm saying that you feel that that's okay to do that.
What do you mean I'm saying? I never said anything like that.
Well, you've been trying to justify why this is done. I've asked you 3 times what you'd say to that young woman. You've declined to say that.
Why are you asking me why it's justified to talk about Harvard's admissions policies, quoting Harvard's admissions statistics?
Because of the impact that it has.
A very strange question.
Okay. Well, I don't have to answer why I question the questions I asked to you, thank you. I do that because I'm representing the listeners who've all called in to me. Why do you suppose there's such a level of opposition to your appointment at Cambridge in the first place?
Well, there was opposition last year. There was a petition to have me fired based on a peer-reviewed paper.
I'm reading online. You found it difficult to get a post in the United States as well. If that's true, why do you suppose there's such global opposition to you, Doctor?
I mean, there's a certain orthodoxy and political sensitivities that prevail, and so people who question orthodoxy at all times.
So it never dawns on you that you might possibly be in the wrong, in that you can't get a post in the United States, and when you come to Cambridge, students protest against you. That's all their fault, not yours, Doctor. All right, let's boil it down to a simple one.
Carefully.
Okay, should well-educated folk like yourself, which undoubtedly you will be, do you have greater rights than others to exercise freedom of speech?
Well, that's a question of law. And there are certainly principles of, say, journalists that apply to journalists or academics to explore.
No, but I'm asking about you, Doctor. My journalist.
Like, that's a question. I can't comment on English law. I'm not a lawyer.
All right, okay. Thank you for your time. Dr. Nathan Kofnas is a Leverhulme Early Career Fellow in the Faculty of Philosophy at the University of Cambridge. He's the one who is facing possible expulsion.
Introducing the new slots. Out now, Betfair Casino.
We start off with the Mirror's terrible story. Thousands back appeal for tragic academic Jason. This is the former Cambridge professor found dead at an address in South London on Friday afternoon. Jason Atta resigned as a professor of sociology of education after allegations of plagiarism and questions about some of his achievements. He had denied the claims, and his family have since said the campaign of misinformation was simply too much for him to take. So let's speak to Wayman Bennett, who is from Stand Up to Racism. And Wayman, you're one of those organising a vigil tonight. Hello.
Good morning, Jeremy. Thank you very much for having me on the show. And once again, I want to send condolences and solidarity to the family of Jason for what they've suffered.
Tell me what's bringing together the people who are gathering tonight.
Firstly, the first thing is that we want Jason remembered for his extraordinary gifts that he had, but also we're quite angry about his treatment. We're angry about the treatment they received from Cambridge, but in particular, we're angry about a kind of witch hunt that took place in the press against him that portrayed him in the most negative light possible, and then basically wouldn't give him the breathing space both to exonerate himself and at the same time to present himself as a normal, decent human being. And we believe that if he wasn't black, if he wasn't a professor, that he wouldn't have been treated like this. And the forces that came against him, Hofsnas, the person that made the original complaint, actually is a racial supremacist, is a man that believes in eugenics, that bumps in the head or the size of people's skulls determine how intelligent they are. And he was presented, not in the red tops as being an expert, but inside mainstream media as being that, and was never exposed that he himself is a fraud. And the research that he's based on is a fraud. He was presented as somebody making a normally reasonable complaint.
So I've got
that's a fraud.
I mean, Nathan Kofnas was let go from Cambridge, dismissed, and you're right, has said some undoubtedly racist things. He's the one who wrote the initial Substack, though, that I did read at the time, which had this sort of passages from Mr. Arday against other passages that were the same. And he said that amounts to plagiarism. And that's where the whole thing started, now we look back.
Yeah, the first thing is that Liverpool University had said that he hadn't done plagiarism, which is a bona fide institution. And the second thing is that he reinforced it with the question of eugenics, that black people are genetically inferior, that women are genetically inferior. Now, what I want to know is why somebody who's so discredited that both the students and the body said that he wasn't fit to teach at Cambridge University is allowed to carry out a vendetta against a black person simply because they're black, not because he thought of intellectual or the question of pedagogical formula. He wanted to carry out a vendetta, and he was aided and abetted by some very serious people in the media, and we're going to hold them to account.
Over 40 new styles have landed.
Poltrone sofà.
Quality sofas. Italian touch.
Love come down.
I love the 80s. Loved it. I still have it in my car every time now. 80s music, love it. From Depeche Mode to Madness.
R&B like Usher and Ja Rule and Ashanti and all that. Yeah, they was bangers.
There is no academic contribution this man ever made that explains his star quality, in inverted commas. And you said he's a star, but he's not a star in any conventional sense. He's a star because of his story, and that is it. It is notable that this guy didn't call the police when there was allegedly a masked man marauding around a Cambridge college trying to kill him. Universities are not there to be kind. That was not their point. They were there to exemplify other values: academic brilliance, innovation, wit, cleverness. That's all they were for.
Hello and welcome back to Case for Jason Atta. I'd say the first was your Unheard piece that kind of blew the lid off the whole affair, and you had actually spent time reading his work. unlike everyone else who had just read the Kofnas piece. So tell us about that. I mean, that was a new dimension that I think really opened people's eyes to this. What's it like?
It's terrible. It's terrible. So the plagiarism seems absolutely, the allegations seem unassailable to me, and to anyone else who's neutral and looks at this, they would absolutely not be tolerated in a student, let alone someone at his level. But even if you left aside the plagiarism, which you shouldn't, but even if you did, there is no way that this person meets the standards of the professorial archetype, or even a lecturer archetype for that matter. It's really, really bad. So I've read a few journal articles. There's this really interesting disconnect between the journal articles and the books. So the journal articles, standard boilerplate critical race theory, full of cliches and familiar dogmatic phrases like, hegemony of whiteness and all the other CRT phrases that pop up time and time again. And it's very trenchant, very militant. And then the books, he's got a book called Cool Britannia, which is about Britpop and racism. I could just put it like that. It's an autoethnographic study of how he really, really fell in love with Oasis and Blur, but then he discovered that there was this dark racist undertone to the Britpop movement. And then he's got another book about neurodiversity that he co-authored with a female academic called Chantal Lewis. Those books, they ramble. They veer unevenly between kind of chatty self-help and academic buzzwords. The sentences collapse. You have to read sentences over and over again, and then you realize it's just like in search of a payoff of meaning that just doesn't come. They spend an awful lot of time on song lyrics, but not in an illuminating way, just in a gimmicky way. There's just so many weird things about those books. And then the talks, which I've also watched a lot of, are even more bizarre. There's one in particular that I watched about Graceland, cultural appropriation in Graceland, Paul Simon's album. And it's really like he's watched a BBC rockumentary about Graceland and he's just regurgitating the talking points. That's really all. I mean, it really does seem like he's just quickly cribbed a few articles on Paul Simon's Graceland and is mentioning them. And there's nothing academic about it. And that this is community-based work. So that looks dodgy as well.
I've got to add here some of his claims of being attacked, or some of these stories of the terrible reception he got at Cambridge have also begun to unravel. And The Guardian has done some quite good work here. It's worth saying, I think, that The Guardian's coverage, we're not normally very nice about The Guardian at Unheard, but I would say that it really helped cement this story because they wrote a very long investigative piece about it. The piece began sounding like it was going to be a kind of condemnation of the attacks on Jason Atta. It led with this sense that alongside Claudine Gay, there was a kind of right-wing movement against professors of colour. And then gradually, as you went down the piece, The Guardian put more and more of their focus on some of his more outlandish claims. And I just want to read one section for our audience, which is around these attacks that he says he suffered while at Cambridge. So, as well as scrutiny of his academic record and fundraising history, Arday claims to have been the victim of a campaign of physical abuse and intimidation. So, racist emails, things like that. But here's where it gets interesting. In an interview with The Guardian, Arday claimed to have been confronted at his faculty building on 2 separate occasions by a masked man threatening to harm him if he did not resign, and evading detection both times. On the second occasion, Arday said the intruder produced a knife and threatened him with it. The Guardian understands that after Arday reported the first intrusion to the university, CCTV was placed in the faculty and a panic alarm was installed in his office. The professor said he hit the panic alarm during the second confrontation, but that no one responded. It would have triggered an alarm alerting the faculty's security team, all of whom were present at the time of the alleged incident. The intruder was not picked up by CCTV on either occasion, and no one in the faculty reported seeing anyone suspicious. Arday did not report either intrusion at the time, telling The Guardian that after the second incident, he continued his working day and even conducted a PhD viva for a student less than 2 hours later. He did not inform colleagues that a masked man with a knife was in the faculty building. So it's quite sort of categorical, that, isn't it?
Yes.
It's cleverly done because I'm sure their lawyers have gone over it. At no stage do they overtly say that this was a lie because they don't want Cambridge University to sue them or whatever. But
do you want one?
Yummy. Right, I am buzzing to see the main app.
Can you take a cute pic of me first?
New Elastoplast Spray Plaster. Easy to apply, creates an invisible seal and moves with you like a second skin.
Trusted on every start line. Elastoplast, HYROX's national event partner.
So, the Met Police, via its Mark Rowley, has confirmed and admitted that the police dropped the ball, to use his phrase, when they investigated the journalist Jack Grove just because he emailed Jason Atta with concerns about his work. But there is something that should make every single person watching this story unfold very angry. And it is not just because it's a juicy scandal or anything like that, although it is a bit of a scandal and, it involves Cambridge, one of the top universities in the world. But moreover, because there is so much wrong in one story here, that if we don't call this out and we don't take things like this seriously, we don't investigate them properly, and we don't actually follow it up, and if there are appropriate consequences on findings that they may or may not make, then, I promise you we're going to end up with very much more of the same. More of these kind of stories, more of these outlandish claims, and more people who might have their work used without permission, without consent, without citation, and so on. And that is just wrong. And we are supposed to respect and hold accountable the universities who issue these qualifications, degrees, and so on. So with that, I'm going to run through a few more bits.
Is a problem that people are able to prosper. And, it's not just Arday. This is something that happens repeatedly again and again. People are able to prosper by telling a story that flatters their audience into thinking that the audience are on the side of the good people.
The resignation this week of Professor Jason Atta hasn't stopped the upcoming publication of his book later this month. His memoir is Great and Unfortunate Things, and it'll be out towards the end of August. The Times columnist Sarah Dyson's read the book and is with us now. Morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
Well, are we sure that he's written it himself? Sorry, that's a bit, I'm being a bit facetious, but you take my point.
Completely reasonable question in the circumstances of a plagiarism row. And he has co-written it. So there is a co-author who is, acknowledged as is proper within the book. But it's his work, and he has not disputed anything that's been written on it, so he takes full responsibility for this whole mess.
And the thing about him, as we've uncovered and discovered this week, is the claims that he has made continuously throughout his life, which, as you reflect in your column, are conveyed in the memoir as well. So what does he sort of stand by? What claims does he own in this book?
Goodness, so it's been quite a job to actually keep a tally on these things. Among the claims that he has made that are not in the book, he doesn't repeat any suggestion that he had a professional football career or a professional snooker career. That's gone. He doesn't talk about having run 600 miles in 6 days, which would be an elite feat of ultramarathoning. He doesn't mention, so this is something that I wasn't aware of, but The Atlantic has run a story comparing the book with The Proposal. And apparently in the book, he describes being hit by a car and being in a coma, which somehow that extraordinary experience did not make it into the finished book. In the book itself, he also doesn't claim to have raised over £3 million for charity in the book either. So that claim has sort of been quietly shuffled off. He does claim in the book that he went to Brazil to install water pumps, something that the charity WaterAid has now said they would never ask any volunteer to do. He claims that he had a brain tumour when he was writing his PhD, lost his memory just before his visa and had to relearn his thesis. Claims, and really, this is the big one to me, actually, claims that he was non-verbal due to autism until the age of 11.